Yeah, here we go. For the motherland. Yeah, yeah, we gon' play it loud until they feel it. Yeah, yeah, we gon' blow the roof up off the building. Yeah, yeah, we gon' play that motherland bounce. Check it out now, motherland bounce. Check it out now, motherland.
Let's go. Nissim, you weren't born in Israel, to my recollection.
No.
So can you tell us a little about the journey?
I grew up in Seattle, Washington. Grew up as an inner city kid. Obviously, completely different life than the Jewish life I live now. Exposed to a lot of different violence and different things like that. Normal things you would see in the inner city. Got involved with gangs very early on myself, and also drug dealing, getting expelled from the school district, and growing up very rough. Now, at the same time, I also still had a very close connection, at least to religion. My grandfather was a Sunni Muslim, so it was the first religion that I knew. And afterwards, he was no longer in my life. He ended up going to prison. And then right around the age of 13, I converted to Christianity because I was a part of a missionary group that had sort of brought me in.
With your family, or that was just...
No, that was alone. Still, my family was not, was not on that same journey with me. But so after age 13, I got very serious about my music also, right around the same time. And I would also be going into high school, which would be the sort of, I guess, somewhat of the stabilizer, the fact that I had this like love for music and everything like that. In high school, I had the extracurricular activities. I played football, big football fan, American football. Real football.
I got excited for 1 second, small second. Forget it, it's not interesting. Cut that bit out.
So my love for sports, and it sort of helped me to stay focused, and so that was sort of like the thing that helped me and was sort of like the backbone throughout like my high school years. So what happened after age 13, before even at that time also getting very serious in music, I had the very, very emotional and powerful experience at this missionary camp. So that was also right before my my high school years. So that powerful experience, having that type of, I guess, to say, religious community support, plus football, plus that kept me away from all the gang stuff and all that. And I stayed clear that throughout my high school years, I was already like almost a different kid than what I had been in my previous years, in my middle school years. And I'm talking about like, getting expelled from the school district, bringing a gun, fighting, robbing people. It was like I was in a different world. Very still spiritually God conscious, but living a completely different life. By that time, so in fact, I didn't end up really going to juvenile detention center until after I was in high school, after I had a complete radical life change. I ended up having a warrant for my arrest. Like I said, I had some very interesting family members that were involved in interesting things. So we got pulled over one time by U.S. Marshals because the car was in the name of, a family member. Then I discovered I had a warrant for my arrest from 3 years ago from failure to appear in court. So by this time, I had no idea. In the interim, in that time, my house had burned down. We had to move locations. So none of the mail or anything, I had no idea. There was no way. I wasn't in trouble with the law.
And your life was in a different place by that point.
And my life in a completely different place. So I remember going to the juvenile detention center and being there. I was only there for a few days. But that experience was so crazy because, like I said, I was already a spiritual kid. As a teenager, I was praying to God all the time, like all the time. And I remember this was at a point in my life where I was saying, God, I just want to spend time with you alone. With nobody else around, nothing else, just you and me. So I ended up in juvenile. They had a Bible in there, in the toilet, in a bed.
Your prayers were answered.
My prayers were answered. So I'm in there, and and I'm telling you, even there, I was on a spiritual high. I was reading the Bible, enjoying my time there, and there was a certain thing about me that the guards there kept coming saying, you don't belong here. There's something here. It's a very special kid. Like they didn't even understand how I ended up there. Things started to shift after, I'm going to say, near the end of my 11th grade year of high school. There was an offer, a standing offer from Virgin Records which was a big record label at the time. And rap was already in this place where, you know, guys like 50 Cent were big, and this gangster rap that really made a big comeback. And so it was very, very hard to try to, at least I guess, be effective or marketable if you weren't following in that vein. Nevertheless, I really didn't jump into that. It was sort of like
Could
more
have been
nudge.
nerd rap. Could have been.
Yeah, for sure, nerd rap. I don't think the world was ready for nerd rap. It took a few more years for nerd rap to come in. And, you know, so one of the things was they wanted me to do before I can, you know, obviously get the deal and move forward. They wanted me to move more into that space. And there was a lot of money on the table. And I started to make new records and do all this. It was so funny because that deal ended up pulling out. And now I was left with this harder persona, this new sound. and slowly but surely, all the guys that I, you know, hadn't spent so much time hanging out with were back into my immediate circle again. So it's like, you know, after a while, you start putting on this whole entire persona to show like, oh no, I'm this, which I wasn't foreign to this type of, you know.
No, but it wasn't where you were at the time.
It just wasn't where I was at the time. But it did bring me down in the sense of why I started to see like, well, you know, hold on. You know, I think the ticker for me was I was having, you know, I had released my own independent project, and I would be sitting with reporters and they'd be saying to me, oh man, you're actually really a nice guy. And I was like, so, like, of course I'm a nice guy. Why would that be a question? And the reason why they would say it is because
the image that they were.
Yeah, the image that they were portraying, and I didn't realize it. And you know, I'd always said after this, when I came to a realization, how can I continue to come to a person in darkness expecting for them to see light, right? It didn't make any sense. So that was like the beginning of this transformation that happened for me.
Like another reawakening.
Another reawakening, which was probably sprung by a actual rap beef. I would say I got into it with another artist because he had, you know, made a song about me, like a diss track. And
was that
so
very common?
It was very common at the time. You know, today it's probably still going on. You know what I mean? But you know, it's really something like, you know, I would say after Tupac and Biggie and the West Coast, East Coast thing, this thing has sort of been more of a, it's been more of like, you know, no different than WWE wrestling.
It's a showmanship.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, whatever, we're gonna do this and we're gonna duke it out, and thereby doing that, we're gonna build promotion for me and for you. It's like an easy promotion PR
I scratch your back,
campaign.
you scratch mine.
Right, exactly.
But people really, there is fallout from it because people really get shut down. I mean, showboating goes a certain way, and then
right, for sure. Especially when it's something that's not planned. So for me, I was very offended because I didn't know this other person like that.
But I started. Part of the plan.
It was not. Yeah, it was not planned. There was no precursor for this. So I was listening to the song. I went to go write a response, and a friend of mine, he came in and he was like, you know, if we go and just handle the guy, let's go beat him up, then he won't make any more songs. So that was what we decided to do. We ended up going and we ended up getting into it, physical confrontation, which led to us leaving. And led to a call I got after I had already left the site. You know, the police came, everything got broken up, you know. As soon as we heard sirens, everybody scattered, right? So we were already gone, and I got a call from somebody else that said that the police are looking for you. And I'm like, for what? Why would for a fight? Like everybody, you know, people fight. It's not like, they didn't come find me. I didn't hurt any property. And he says, no, they said you had a gun and you were shooting and blah, blah, blah. And that was a complete fabrication of the story.
This was put out by the other side?
Yeah, this is so in the end, what I ended up finding out afterwards, to make a long story short, that it was a good friend of mine who came up after we had left. See, the other guys that ran, they ended up going back inside the hotel. They ended up going back inside the club because they were having like a meeting or something like that. And that's the club wasn't a regular club night. They had the club for a meeting, and it was like this rap, like, you know, parliament or whatever. And when they ended up going back inside, I had a friend who came up afterwards, and he went to go try to take the life of the other person. And I think he ended up, you know, obviously he didn't end up shooting him, So ended up like attempted murder. But after he went into custody immediately, and it had the appearance that I sent somebody after him. So the other guys
Sounds
are
like
going
he
to
was
come after me. So
pre-orchestrated.
yeah, for sure. So it got very, very ugly, and it turned me into like a kill or be killed situation, because this person obviously is going to be upset because he had his life threatened on the highest level. He was just shot at. Somebody tried to take his
And
life.
officially in his mind came from you.
Right, of course. In his mind, it's going to be like, who's the guy I had the problem with? So that really brought me to a place of me really like thinking, you know what I mean, after, and we were able to get on the phone, squash things out like men. After that, I started to really think, and I started to reflect on, like, you know, how did I get to such a place? You know, how did my reality shift back to something that I thought I already left? And so that was sort of the beginning stages of me searching.
Yeah. He said it's God's plan, but I'm God's man.
I started going to the Bible and looking at things that I had, you know, I was a big fan of the Bible. So much so, I probably should have been doing my schoolwork when I was in high school. And I was like addicted to the Bible. I was reading, I had highlighted my Bible so much, there was no point of having a highlighter because everything was highlighted already. But so I went back to starting to read and try to, and what happened was the questions that I had as a young Christian teen trying to find answers, they started to resurface. You know, if JC was Jewish, how come Christians aren't Jewish? Chronological order. I had obviously had some experience in Islam also, so I wanted to know what was the difference. And which one came first. So I started to search, and Judaism was like screaming at me. You know what I mean? It was a very, very interesting thing. There was a certain honesty inside the text and inside the Navi, inside the prophets, that spoke volumes to me. Unlike, you know, and both the, you know, not to disrespect, but the, you know, the Christian Bible also, the Quran. From that, what I search is almost like there's a there's no fallacy with the prophets or any of the people that are Hakshiva are important inside the religion, and like the whole Jewish Bible is just all about our mess ups. It's like a whole entire book. The Tanakh is just how it's all about failure.
It's not a glowing resume.
Right. And for me, that was life. Like, I lived life with those ups and downs. I come from that type of, so it resonated with me so much, and to see the fact that even in Hosea, I think it is, that God talks about he's married to the backslider, those who fall away, and he's constantly not giving up on us, you know. So seeing that really gave me a heart for Judaism, and to be a part of that relationship, special relationship that Hashem has with Klal Yisrael. So, you know, it would take, you know, a few years later of me learning, me and my wife got her sister also interested. Her sister at the time was dating my best friend, somebody I've been close friends with since kindergarten, and now my producer also. And we all converted same day and had a double wedding, and you can see their balcony from here also. That's next door, my brother and sister-in-law. But yeah, it's been a very, very special journey.
And I guess your wife, she has her own
Yeah.
her own interview.
Yeah. She may tell the story slightly different around the time we met and different things like that.
Right.
I say she fell over the head, heels in love with me, and she tells it the other way.
I offered my wife the chance to speak at our wedding, and she refused. Said, "Right, well, we're getting my version." So,
Right. So my side is for sure true.
So you mentioned the idea that I asked myself why this was happening and where and it sounds like you were just always very reflective of internally. Sure. And I'm just okay. I guess it's current in the news now. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of things going on, particularly in America. A lot of unrest, a lot of social, and there seems to be like a tension even within people that are like frustrated there to know where's my personal responsibility of saying, look, if my life is no good, I've got to really reflect why that is, and how much do I feel there's systematic problems as well that mm-hmm. keep me in a difficult place. I guess I'm just curious to see how when you hear and see what's going on. You describe being in inner city Seattle, like how do you resonate with that? Where do you think personal responsibility begins and institutionalized things
Right. So there's a you know, when you use like certain words like victimhood, different things like that. Now, that being a space is a problem for me. However, being a victim of something is like, you know, it's no different than being a victim of the crime, right? I was a victim of systemic racism, what I feel like, right? That doesn't mean that determines the way that I see the world or how I try to progress as an individual, you know, in a human being. And, you know, so that's what I mean. So those things are just being a victim and victimhood is two different things, right? Jewish people were victim of the Holocaust, right? So victimhood would look like, you know, just completely not allowing yourself to succeed, you know, completely because of what happened, and to constantly use that as the reason why, right? So, so I feel like there is somewhat of a fine line, but the truth is like this, you know, concerning what's going on there now, there's so much noise, right? And I don't even think people allowed themselves to have the opportunity to really think about, you know, where's my role in this and what does this really mean to me? You know what I mean? I have seen, you know, just even on my own feed and different things, people sending me stuff nonstop, right? People who have grown up in two-family home, African American, also grew up in the same inner city, went to the same high school and all that, completely different outcome. I'm telling you, people that are just mamish, beautiful, genuine people, and are raising, you know, beautiful family, and they had a good foundation because they had two parents at home. That's not what's happening across the board inside the urban communities in you know, not only in Seattle and all over the United States with African Americans. So, but we're able to look at it and take a model of something and say like, listen, but he's out there, my friend, he's marching and doing all these things to everybody, but he hasn't experienced all the social injustice by the system because, you know, he was able to be presented a different lifestyle that allowed him to make better choices with his life, right? So at the end of the day, it still does come back to choices. There's one particular case of a friend of mine who grew up, his parents, you know, struggled with drugs, both his mother and his father. He was raised by a grandmother. Grandmother worked very, very hard. It wasn't only him in the house. They had, you know, other cousins, brothers, sisters. And so that left him with a lot of free time and responsibility, you know, for himself, all right? Now, most people that grow up in that type of lifestyle, going to the same high school that we went to in the same neighborhoods, it's like it's a done deal. It's only a matter of time before he ends up on the street. This kid didn't end up on the street. 4.0s all throughout high school, ended up with an academic scholarship to go to the University of Washington and entered into law school, and he's, you know, one of the most brilliant and awesome individuals that I know. So it's what I'm saying, it's a fine line between what you call somewhere being oppressed and you got to make better choices. You know what I mean? My whole situation, you know, from growing up and being in the type of inner city, like I said, going to the same high school as these two individuals, right? Having that incident that caused me to become more of a man of faith allowed me to make choices to where my kids don't know nothing from that type of lifestyle. You understand what I'm saying? They don't feel that type of oppression. They have their own struggles here in Israel, but they're not dealing with that type of thing. So what I say is it comes down to choices. And for some people it's harder. I'm asked that question all the time, every time I speak. Why you and not the rest of the boys from the hood that you grew up with? Why was it you? And at the end of the day, I think it was me. I made a choice. I was listening to a small, still voice and not the noise. And I think right now it's very hard for people to hear. It's noise. It's noise all over the place. And like you said before, my response to things is I become very reflective and I start to look at things and analyze them and say, hold on, what could I do better? So
So it's amazing that you have that from internally, that you're so reflective. But
Right.
I guess everyone has it in them, and sometimes it needs people don't. You mentioned you came to Israel. You mentioned your kids have a whole different set of struggles here. So
Right.
maybe if we focus a little bit on that. Here we are in Rabat Shemesh.
Mhm.
We're here as part of a fundraiser for Hakshiva. Hakshiva do amazing work in the community, and I guess in a very, very different way. But they're facing the same kind of parameters of dynamic, meaning they've got a lot of teenagers now in the neighborhood. Outlets are very different here, maybe it's the way they were, maybe there are enough, maybe they're not enough. And many different families, many different backgrounds. People came, I think everyone in this room here, we all came to live in this country from
Right.
each of our own backgrounds. And in this melting pot, you've got all these teenagers also, growing up in that. If you look around, what do you think maybe here, as opposed to maybe some of the background we spoke about there, where are some of the challenges here, and how do you think Hakshiva maybe is best placed to, or sometimes does, from what you maybe do or don't know about them, deal with some of these issues? Where are the kids struggling nowadays?
I think there's an overall issue, well, not just the kids in Beit Shemesh, but I think it'll come back to Beit Shemesh, that we're looking like just like we're dealing with this in the frum world, in the world of Judaism. Right? There has been a structured system. We go back to systems that was put in place for elite learners many years ago. The yeshiva system, as we know it today, was built on that foundation. It wasn't built for every single boy, and so there was a specific reason and why it was built for people that, everybody's learning a trade. This one learns how to, go work in the fields as a farmer. This one learns how to, work, I don't know, whatever, as a blacksmith, whatever. And this one, he goes and learns, we need Rebbeim. So let's make a machine for us to be able to have Rebbeim, to be able to give over halachas and to be able to guide the rest of Klal Yisrael, who has their own gifts and talents, and Kishron is the way that Hashem gave us. And this is not more special than that, but that's his tafki, right? To where now today, this is just my own research and seeing, now that system has become the system, and if anybody doesn't fit inside of it, then, is at risk, And I feel like it's unfair, and I feel like there is a, that's one side of the problem. Another thing is that I believe that I make maybe a bigger issue than other people are going to make an issue. It's something very pashut. There's not enough study of Tanakh and Pashas. Like, think about the whole story of what I just told you about how powerful it was for me reading the Navi. Why was that important? Because I needed to see that because I have failures doesn't mean that God doesn't want me anymore. Understand what I mean? Right. So I feel like there's an emotional piece of not only that, then also on a very pashut level, I need to hear about Hashem and his magnificence and his ability to do miracles, and what is the expectation of the relationship what I can expect from Hashem when I submit and give over my whole entire life to him. Also, I feel like there's a hester panim, there's a hiding of Hashem, because we stop looking for him. And we're now looking in the places and where Hashem is in the most, it's got to be simple, because it says in the Torah, it's not down in the sea or up in the mountains, it's in your mouth, your heart, so you can do, your heart and your mouth, so you can do. It's very, very near to you. So I feel like we have to take Hashem from all the way this abstract the place or whatever that you have to go into the base midrash, and you got to learn this many blot and this and all this. No, Hashem is very, very close to each and every person, and you have your kishronos, you have your kishronos. So when you come and you bring it back into like even our community, one of the things I've been proud about is, my eldest is a girl. There's so many different things here for her to do. That, God bless, we weren't able to have in Meir Shaim. There's dance classes, there's, she did have an art class there, but, art, singing, Azama was the camp that she was in. But that's a beautiful thing, it's an outlet for these young women. So what, they don't have Kishronos, Hashem didn't give women gifts? For sure he did. Hashem gave women Kishronas. He gave every single person their own gifts, their own talents. So I think the biggest thing is to be able to create and to one of the things that you said, we need more and more outlets for people to express their own gifts. I think that that's the beautiful thing, because people generally feel constricted when they're not allowing themselves to be who they really are. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's already a built-in thing. How do we find ourselves, or the youth find themselves struggling with the Yiddishkeit, is when they don't see themselves in it. So I think that that's an important thing, that more outlets and more, also growing up, like I said, in the inner city, one of the biggest changes I saw with the decline, I would say, of kids that were in the streets and in the same type of programs and Bible study groups and different things like that we're involved in, was that when the funding got cut for all these different support organizations and centers, camps, summer camp, all these things that went away. We had people that were able to come, on the school campus to be with us and help us, not only just academically, but spiritually, people of faith. When these things got cut, a lot of money ended up going to the gang unit, rightfully so. Because that's where you're going to start having the problems with. You don't have, it's a very old saying. But if you don't give people what to do, then they'll find something to do.
Okay, Corona.
And don't drink it.
Yes, and apparently their sales have plummeted.
That's what I heard.
I'm like, who thinks that this gives you that?
But this is an example. This is an example of everything that I'm telling you from going on, what's going on in America. People, it's so loud, people don't even listen. They don't listen to themselves. And I'm thinking, Corona, right? So it takes one person to start saying Corona beer has a disease, and the whole world's going crazy. Nobody's drinking Coronas or whatever. Not that I'm endorsing Corona, but I'm just saying, you understand what I'm saying? Sure. Like, that shows you how something could be so loud that you don't even reflect, you don't hear. Hitler, Yimak Shemo, so loud. Nobody questions. Nobody thought about it. It's just propaganda, loud. I feel like people have been traumatized. Well, for teenagers, it's already most teenagers, unfortunately, it's either one of the other extremes. Either they hate being at home or they love being at home. Depending on the kid, maybe depending on the house. But I think this situation. This Corona and the quarantine or whatever all over the world, but especially here also too, it's very it starts to reveal to you things that were under the surface, things that you may have not even dealt with. It's a tough thing. You think about it, just like there's a lot of people in general that can't ride in a car without listening to music or the radio, because they would have to hear themselves.
Yeah.
And that's scary for them. So people will have to deal with themselves, and that can be very uncomfortable. So I feel like that's and I think that in hindsight, for a lot of people, it's going to actually turn out to be a very beneficial thing that they went through, and they'll see it afterwards. It's just like, wow, there was a lot of things I never dealt with, so I was able to be more reflective, especially in teenage years. It's like, generally, very social, you're very, very out. But like you said before, it's like with social media, I don't know how much people were able to, how much of that they were able to actually have that moment we're talking about, just like, oh my goodness, you know what I mean?
Right. That's missing.
It's missing.
You have it, I think, you're a very special person, and it's inbuilt for you.
Right.
But most people, I guess the person in the juvenile center noticed it straight away, like, you don't belong here.
Right.
And you didn't, but teenagers are made of different molds, as you said.
For sure.
And we have to find a way to give them that space.
I don't think it's, like I said, I don't think you could generalize such a thing, because the quarantine was so personal to each person, how they were dealing with it. I heard for some people, their Shalom bias stocks went through the roof. Right. Other people, it's not ending so well. So for me, even a person that travels, I spend a lot of my time on the road, and I was forced to be here with my wife and my kids, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the time. So I feel like, you know, you always have those different stories, but generally as a teen, you gotta be, you know, involved with other people and being able to get out. It's a very, very tough thing for them. I can only imagine how, you know, how tough it was. I mean, my daughter, she became bas mitzvah during this time.
Wow.
During the bidud, so it was like, it was great for my checkbook. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean?
But pay different prices.
Right. Yeah. But you know, she handled it like a pro. You know, her cousins lived next door, so we had her cousins over and whatever. So we made something of it. But I feel like, you know, generally it's going to be on us as adults and as parents to be able to give them that type of wonderful experience. You know what I mean? Even during a lockdown.
Now, you said music was part of your life. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, for sure.
You definitely have seemed to have excelled in the genre of rap, but you've also changed your style over time.
Mm-hmm.
I also see that you know, you seem to be very good humoured. You know, I saw just recently one of the. Am I allowed to say coming to America?
This place is a dope. We are royalty. We must go back to our place in Kiswana.
No. We are staying right here. This is the motherland.
Whatever. I enjoyed it. I was like, this is great. The guys in my share, some of the guys in my share were like, what's that? I'm like, here you go. But you obviously like you see the funny side of life. You enjoy that. You bring it out in the different things that you do. And do you think that's very important? Like sometimes people have also lost that spark of. I mean, creativity is one thing,
right,
but also just personal simcha.
For sure, I think so. You know, you thought that was some. Wait till you see the next video. I think you know, the thing is about like people, they want to laugh, and I think I learned something. I learned during this bidud the importance of simcha. It was very tough for me. Being very, very like open about it. I've always been. I would consider myself a man of emunah to, you know, to the heights, like whatever that is, and I feel like I've lived my life like that, especially as I came into Judaism, being a student of Rabbi Arush, everything like that. And I started to see the power really of the news and social media and the effect that it can have on somebody, on emotionally and mentally. I hadn't watched the news prior to this breakout of Corona and all that, maybe in like 8 years. I'm just being honest. Like actually sat down, been a consumer of news, finding out actually what's going on. And the amount of fear that was being pumped through it, that I felt like got to me, caused me to have an anxiety attack, right? And it wasn't until I really like locked myself in my room. I have a room, my prayer room, he's both in this room or whatever, and really started like dealing with like, hold on, Hashem, what's, you know? Like I start to see like, man, this is a very, very powerful, it's evil. You know what I'm saying? This is an evil thing. And to emotionally trying to deal with that and to overcome that was just sort of like, you know, I was calling my doctor that is a very, very, these mediums, these phones, these guys, whatever the case is, it's a very, very scary thing. And a lot of people who find themselves consumed in it, and what it did, I feel like right now for a lot of people, is it caused a lot of hurt and pain and made a lot of people, you know, have to deal with things that they didn't even know were there. Hugging people, I miss high-fiving, I miss, you know, all these different things.
See, I'm British, so for me, I'm like, finally, the world's socially distancing. This is great. You know, they finally caught up. We've been doing this for hundreds of years. We've been preparing for this. Listen, it's been a real experience. I mean, I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Just to see that, you know, I've never really met a real rap artist before, apart from myself, of course. But you're such a deep person, you're so insincere, and you're so thought through, and this is obviously something that's been from probably birth till now, and has brought you to where you are. So it's a very big privilege. I think someone who's able to express himself so clearly can also be such a positive role model for so many teenagers. So I think it's very fitting that Hakshiva and you have collaborated on this. So I just want to say thank you very, very much.
Thank you.